D. Watkins here with Salon.com, and today I'm joined by David Simon, creator of The Wire, The Corner, The Deuce, mastered writer, journalist, storyteller.
We're a long way from Baltimore.
Yeah, a long way from Baltimore. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
It's a really, really hectic day. Really a lot to swallow, a lot to deal with today. So, you know, I want to get into the show and everything, but how do you think that the media has been covering the current events and what's going on in Las Vegas and everything from a journalist's perspective?
You know, I have to confess, I've been stuck in some story meets today. So I read everything I could in the morning about Las Vegas, but whatever's developed, I think since about 10 o'clock, I'm fairly oblivious to. I was amazed to see how quickly the "let's not politicize this" cries came up. You know, as if, you know, when it comes to sort of gun culture in this country, you know, our house is on fire and we're always told, you know, don't call 911 now, you know, let's wait a day, let's wait 2, let's be respectful. I don't have any regard for that anymore. I just think it's an incredibly dishonest framework in which to look at, now is exactly the time to look at our gun culture and our gun laws.
For sure. Do you think Congress is going to do anything?
Nope. I think Congress is the broken part of the American government. It's the part that's been purchased. It can be easily purchased. You know, the price of a representative is fairly cheap by the standards of massed capital.
It's like buy one get one free now.
Yeah, I mean, really, you know, those guys live in terror. And if they're not going to be a good vote for you, you can literally walk into their offices and show them the template of the tape that you're going to run against them for whoever you get to run to the right of them. So, you know, we don't have your vote. You know, the NRA will walk in the campaign tape that of the commercials they're going to run against you to knock you off. I mean, they live in terror.
So you've been busy all day, but I've been following this, and the NRA has been silent. Like every time these incidents happen, they don't really tweet a lot, they don't say a lot, and then they come up with some type of empty statement, but they don't take any responsibility.
I'm waiting somewhere in the next 24-hour cycle. You'll get the statement either from a spokesman or from Wayne LaPierre that will be about if only more of those people had been armed at that country.
Then more people would be dead.
Oh, of course.
Like they didn't even know. He can't say that because this guy was like a quarter mile away.
Oh, yeah,
so no one knew where the bullets.
Sniper.
Yeah, no one knew where the bullets was coming from. So he can't sit there and say, you know, we need more guns.
Yeah, we need good people with guns.
So he might take like 48 hours to make a statement on this.
I mean, it's just, you know, listen, we're the only country. You know, we have 8% of the world population, something like that, 6%. I'm not sure, but certainly it's single digits, and we have 50% of the mass killings. This is a love of Moloch, of the ancient god that just, you know, needed human blood. I mean, if nothing happened after Newtown, and, you know, 27 dead school children, nothing's going to happen now.
I was looking at a website earlier that tracks mass shootings in America, and they define a mass shooting as 4 or more people shot or killed in the same general space and time. And by that definition, we are like number 273 right now.
Yeah,
this year, 2017.
Yeah, and you can say what you want about, oh well, we've always had guns in this culture. The fact is, and you and I know it from Baltimore. You know,
we had 5 killings this weekend.
Yeah, 16, 17, 18 to a clip, 1 in the chamber, quick reload. I mean, the amount of damage that you can do is geometric compared to what it was when it was, you know, 6 in the chamber, 5 in the chamber, and a speed loader. You know, the technology has now reached a point. You know, none of our founding fathers contemplated a 9mm and 3 quick reloads, you know, to spray a street.
Yeah, you don't need automatic weapons to hunt deer,
or semi-automatic.
Or semi-automatic weapons to hunt deer. And these people always talk about protecting their families, but it's like, what are you doing so bad that you need, you know, an automatic weapon to protect your family? Like, what you should some self-work.
I mean, it's, you know, we're in a never-ending cycle here. You know, at what point will there be enough guns in America? We have more than more than a gun per human being in the United States right now is on the street. So, I mean, at what point are we saturated?
You know, definitely want to send out, you know, prayers to the families and the victims.
Yeah.
You know, it's a horrible situation. But we're here to talk about the show. You did it again, man. The Deuce is amazing. Let's
Feels trifling now to talk about a television show after that, but
I mean, yeah, no, I know, but you know, I
gotta
feel
do my
like
job.
You did great work, and I think we need to be entertained, and we need to learn, and we need to constantly, as artists, we must contribute to culture when things like this happen. That's what we do. This is how we bring humanity to, you know, a lot of people who wouldn't be considered. So let's go to the trailer.
Who's your man?
No man, just me.
How does that work?
You gotta work a little harder. You gotta be a little more careful.
You could do what they do.
I know I could, but would I?
There's gonna be an opportunity coming your way.
It's gonna be good. What am I looking at?
In the future.
When do we start?
So let's get right into it. For those who haven't seen the show yet, explain the title, The Deuce.
40 Deuce was 42nd Street in New York, main stem of Times Square, and it was at this point in time in the 70s. It was kind of a mess, maybe a glorious mess if you like chaos, but it was also the place and time where pornography took off in America. There'd always been pornography. I mean, brown paper bag, under the counter stuff. There'd always been prostitution, of course. That's pretty biblical. And people have been, you know, making dirty pictures since about 15 minutes after the first French guy invented a camera. So it wasn't like it didn't exist, but there was a point in the early 70s where the interpretation of American obscenity law became anybody's guess.
Right.
And judges in New York started saying, we can't figure out what you mean by obscene, and referring to the Supreme Court and higher appeals courts. And so everything suddenly became street legal. And that was really interesting to me when I started researching it, because what you end up with is a world in which there's no viable, you know, they're dealing with thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars maybe in profit, and suddenly they're going to be dealing in billions, because all of a sudden what was not an industry has now become legitimized. So what I got interested in what happened to the pioneers, you know, what happened to the people who were there at the beginning.
It's like you know, people they look at that part of Manhattan as this glorious place that's just like inaccessible and rich and touristy, and it wasn't always like that.
Disney did not have that real estate back then. There was not chain restaurants up and down 42nd Street. I mean, at this time, I got to say, this was all research because I was like 11 in 71. So, you know, my understanding of what Times Square was or wasn't is a little later than that. But even by the time I got up here in my late teens or in my 20s, New York was a much more dangerous place than people. I mean, listen, it's one of the safest cities in America right now in terms of per capita crime rates. But
yeah, I walk around Brooklyn, you know, that I heard rappers talking about when I was a kid, and it's like, it looked like Urban Outfitters. Like everybody has cuffed jeans, and they like offering me like all types of bottled waters I never heard of. Like it's crazy.
Brooklyn is so chic right now that like I got people I know who are like, I got to get back to Manhattan because I can't afford these rents. And I never thought I would hear that. The only thing that can mug you in Alphabet City now is, you know, is a 2-star restaurant. But there was a time where it seemed like it was legitimate to ask a question like, can New York save itself? Because the infrastructure of the city was so impoverished, yet there was still great wealth here, but it seemed like it was a city that had no plan for its future and didn't quite know what to do with its vice.
Right.
And you know, what New York had that other cities like Baltimore and other places, you know, that are more sort of post-industrial had this incredible engine on Wall Street generating a 30-year run-up in the economy. So I mean, that's just an incredible amount of money to rebuild almost everything, and it had a unique spatial relationship to being the financial capital of the country. So
It's like some of the women in the show, the prostitutes, when they first started learning about the industry, they saw it as like a big way out. Like it's like some of them got real big eyes and.
Yeah, I mean, there was a moment where pornography was, well, they called it porn chic. There was a moment where the people engaged in the early years of it thought this will become a new narrative form or even art form, and it will just be, it'll be cinema, but there'll be people fucking.
Right.
And that sounds naive looking back on it because, sort of, I don't think it ever amounted to more than, sort of a...
Yeah, think about the Congress people in the middle of America.
Well, everybody, I mean, actually, the market for it is all over. I mean,
right.
there is no little old lady in Peoria who is saying, I mean, in fact, they found an audience everywhere, and porn became ubiquitous in American life. But what it didn't become theater, like the physical plant of I'm going to go down to the theater house and see an X-rated film in a seat with a bunch of other guys in raincoats. If you invested in that, and the mob did, and other people did, if you invested in that, you lost money in the end. Mm-hmm. If you invested in the idea of the videotape, of it going to everybody's living rooms and to privacy, then you made a lot of money, because eventually they got every bit of art out of it, and it was basically just 8-10-minute loops of sort of masturbation material for men. That was all it was.
One thing that you're really good at is delivering humanity to characters that a lot of people forget about in like mainstream society. So like, if you talk to a bunch of people who never met a pimp before, they're gonna be like, that's a horrible person. If you're talking to a bunch of people who never met a drug dealer, who never met a prostitute, who never met a poor person, they're just gonna have like all of these ideas as if they don't have community, as if they're not able to laugh, as if they don't eat sandwiches.
Right.
Is that like a goal for you, or does it just happen when you develop the characters?
It's sort of a necessary, it's job one in a way if you're gonna write stories about any world. I found this through journalism. I mean, long before I was doing anything on television. You would go someplace and you would think, well, I have all these preconceived notions about how people are going to be, and then you start hanging out, and you're going to know this. You pop up on a corner in East or West Baltimore. There's a sense of humor. There's a wit. There's a vernacular that you wouldn't have learned if you tried to imagine it. Mm-hmm. And too many writers, I think, try to imagine it. Mm-hmm. You got to hear it first. You got to enjoy it on human terms. You got to learn the cadence of people's lives. And once you've done that, then you can add the idea of, okay, well, their day involves, selling drugs or chasing the guys selling drugs if it's cops or tricking if they're, I mean, at the point at which you start adding in, okay, well, they've got this other element that maybe is problematic, you've already got a grounded human being. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't done the first thing, then you're on the way to stereotype. I mean, you really have to consider everybody first as a person, however flawed their lives are, and then consider circumstance.
Like, you see a character like Cece slicing the woman's underarm, but then you see him under a different element, like talking about goals and dreams and just wanting to get away. Yeah,
I mean, listen, nobody was...
You ever been to Paris?
Yeah, listen, nobody's more manipulative than a pimp.
Right.
And at the same time, like we had 4 guys who were playing our main 8th Avenue pimps. Mm-hmm. And the thing we wanted to do, the one goal we had was said, look, this is really fraught. We have, I mean, the bottom line is 8th Avenue, the pimps and the control of the street trade, it was African American by and large. So, okay, if we're going there, this better be 4 distinct voices of real people that seem different, that have different aspirations, different ways of dealing. They're going to be in this world. We can't lie about the demographics of what we have to do here if we're presenting this world.
Right.
But we got to be really thoughtful about who we're creating here. And so that's an awful lot of reading. That's an awful lot of watching every documentary there is, watching, all the Iceberg Slim stuff, which is incredibly informing. And then talking to survivors of that time about who they remember and who was big, and then you still got to sit down and you got to write it, and there are moments where you look at it and you say, man, I hope this conveys. I hope that and then a lot of it has to do with the actor coming in and making it their own and finding the core, the humanity underneath.
I also like how cities are like a character in a lot of your work too. It's like Calvino, it's like New Orleans, Baltimore, New York. Is it like a what's the difference? What's the in a general sense?
Well, there's no place like Baltimore, right?
No doubt, man. Home court.
I mean, New York's its own creature. I mean, it's just so big, and this particular time is inaccessible to us. I mean, I have some memories when I was 17 and 18. I worked up here for a summer, and so I did see Times Square in that period, which I guess it'll be our second season. Will be set in that period, but it's just so big, and it has elements that are faster and more provocative than any other place, I think, in America. But Baltimore has its own unique vibe. New Orleans has has layers upon layers. Its nuances have nuances. You got to go somewhere and you got to sort of soak it up and get as much as you can. And it's never perfect, Like it's not as if, I mean, even Baltimore. I got to Baltimore in '82, and so by the time we were writing The Wire, I had I don't know, 18 years in the city. Not enough for somebody who was there for 30 or 40. I mean,
Right.
I mean, how much old school have you heard since you started writing about the city? How many people have come to you and say, "Oh, you don't remember"?
Yeah,
But,
I probably can't think past. I can't think past Rudy Williams. I can't think past Rudy Williams.
not past Linwood.
Yeah, I was born in the '80s, so
Right.
like I was a kid growing up, and so I like Milton Tillman, and it's
Right.
Knowles
Well,
and
I mean, when
those-
I got to town, I had people saying to me, well, you don't know what hell is. You don't remember the Vini brothers in
Right.
'64. I'm like, no, I don't. I was 4 years old. So I mean, there's no matter how much you acquire, it's always imperfect. But always be gathering strength. That's what you
Right.
want to do.
Right. So tell everyone what time the show times, and it's HBO.
Oh,
and,
we're on at 9 on Sundays, right opposite that thing called NFL football.
Yeah,
So,
no need to watch football no more anyway.
No,
Like, Trump is ruining it.
take a knee on football. Take a knee on that.
Take a knee on football.
And watch the Deuce. We're on later
doubt.
that night, and there's repeat airings through the weeks, and of course you can if you're HBO or if you're pirating HBO and you got the code, you can watch it on HBO Go, right? Or you can just wait for the DVDs to come out and shoplift those.
Diego's like pirate HBO.
Yeah.
So one more thing I wanted to ask you really quick about the White House is that supposedly there was a wiretap. So in the White House, right? And the first thing that came to my mind was the wire. So do you think, if allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly, if that was true, what does that do? What would that do to an organization with so many obvious examples of corruption, like Trump's?
I would certainly induce a certain amount of paranoia. I do not believe there was an actual tap on anyone in the executive branch, or on candidate Trump, or on President-elect Trump. I think there were FISA Title IIIs, wiretaps approved, on people who were in contact with the Russians and who were being monitored, and they in turn called people in the White House and perhaps called Trump, and that is very interesting. But it's not as if Trump is being targeted, as I know from any wiretap I ever covered in Baltimore. You get up on somebody's phone and you can't tell who they're going to call, and it's your job as an investigator. When you get up on a phone and somebody makes a legitimate call that doesn't seem to be related to criminal activity, you're supposed to minimize that call. You're supposed to stop recording it, stop listening, and a conscientious investigation will do that. On the other hand, you're listening to them talk to somebody, it's about what you're interested in, about what your probable cause was for, you're allowed to listen. You know, who somebody calls, that's why you're on the phone. You're trying to find out if there is a criminal conspiracy, who are the other members of it. So
it's way different now with these iPhones and all that. I know it's like probably like crazy.
You know, it took them a while to catch up to mobile phone stuff. They used to catch that stuff.
But
off
Trump's
tower.
call log is probably like golf buddy group chat and then like Putin. I feel like I know he doesn't call. Like, who would call Mike Pence? Would you call Mike Pence? Hey, Mike, what are you doing, Mike? Like, what's
I'm gonna
Mike?
make a bet. I'm gonna make a bet. I'm gonna make a bet. Vladimir Putin is not anywhere on a phone with. You know, they're going to be intermediary to intermediary. You know, and that, you know, if after it mattered, those two actually got in a room together, they're dumber than, Putin's dumb. Trump's capable of anything, but Putin is, you know, I just can't see that happening. I think he's too smart for that.
He's on. Yeah, you catch him with Trump, and you walk in on a room and surprise them. Trump's gonna turn around like you don't know him like I do.
I'll tell you one thing. I'm glad somebody's looking at it because there's, you know, the pattern of behavior is really disturbing. I don't know where it goes. I'm willing to wait for Mueller to find what he finds, but you know, I'd be very upset if that wasn't given a chance to address what we're all wondering about.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens, but you know,